Good afternoon, everybody. Dan Munzer, President of TLMI. Thrilled to have you on here. I'm very shortly going to be handing this over to Brian Vickers of PACE, and then he's being supported by our government and regulations co-chairs, Alexandra Jostin and Catherine Heckman of CCL and Ashland Chemical, respectively. Long story short, TLMI, as I'm sure the fact that you're on this webinar, you've been following what we're trying to do to expand our presence in government and regulation. And last year we had a very successful fly-in into the DC area and had over 143 different meetings with senators and representatives in partnership with other associations around print. And this year, that association, which Brian and Alex and Catherine are representing TLMI at in various discussions, has decided this is the year that we need to have our congressional members come visit us. So we thought, what a better way to kick this off than to let our people who know best what to do in that situation, i.e. Brian, with help from Alexandra and Catherine, to lead us off. So Brian, I'm going to hand it over to you, but I just want to let everybody know that Brian does just a tremendous amount of work on our behalf, is a great asset and ally of TLMI, and what he says goes in my book. So Brian, thanks for everything, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. Thank you, Dan, and welcome everybody. Thank you all for making time out of your afternoon to join us here on our webinar to provide an overview of how to host a member of Congress or even a state legislator at your plant or your facility when they're not in session at the Capitol here. And I'm going to run through the slides, and we've got some overviews I'm going to touch base on. But before I do, I'll open it up to our GRA committee co-chairs, Alex Jostin with CCL and Catherine Heckman with Ashland, just to say hello to everybody and any opening comments here before we begin.
Thanks, Brian. This is Alex Jostin from CCL. Catherine and I just want to thank you for joining us today. For those of you who are members of the GNR committee, you know this is something we've been working towards extensively over the past several years of getting this information out to our membership. We're really excited to be taking this next step in the GNR journey, and we hope that you really enjoy the webinar, and I'll hand it back over to you, Brian, unless Catherine would like to say something.
No, other than thank you for everyone taking the time out of your busy day to join us. And as you go along in this journey with us, we'd love to get feedback, pictures, comments when you do actually have these facility visits from congressional members of Congress. We'd love to hear how those visits work for you. So again, thank you.
Great, thank you both very much. And with that, I'll begin here. So just a quick overview of the webinar and what we're going to cover today. Background on facility and the plant tours, how you want to prepare your tour for the member, the legislator coming into your facility or plant, and there's some kind of do's and don'ts and really some things that you want to be aware of before they get there in advance, both in terms of co-workers, your colleagues, and your employees as they are there during that day during the operations. We're going to touch a bit on what you want to highlight during the visit. What should your member take away from the visit in your production process and the products that you make? And just as important as hosting the member is the follow-up. How do you connect with them after the visit, and really how do you tie it into what you would like to see your member do in terms of legislation or other initiatives at the congressional or the state level. So with that, I'll begin here with a bit of the background. Why host a member at your facility? I think the most important thing, it's an opportunity to highlight what your company does and what you produce. I can tell you that if they're well planned, these visits go extremely well, regardless of party affiliation or even personal politics which of course we would ask everyone to not get into if a member's at your facility, but they like to connect. They like to understand what their constituents and more importantly, or most importantly, what their employers do in the district back home. Close-up look at your production process, and we're going to talk a bit about this during the, how to kind of guide your member through the facility itself in terms of connecting with employees and getting a kind of a hands-on experience within your facility. Economic impact on the district or state. You'll want to highlight this. You'll want to highlight this in leave behinds, which I'll touch upon as well, but you'll want to highlight it throughout the tour as well. Your companies pay payroll taxes and obviously sales taxes and importantly employee constituents both in and outside the district. And you're going to want to emphasize that throughout the tour process. And again, that touches, of course, upon the number of employees and how you fit into the district overall. Remember, showcase your business, facility upgrades, investments, any planned expansions. Members of Congress and their staff that will be with them during these tours are always interested in those elements. You really want to kind of highlight to them, we're putting X amount of money into this process. We're looking at expanding the facility. We're looking at hiring more employees. Whatever you can do to demonstrate that you're growing your facility, if you are, you'll want to touch upon that as well. So remember this, the member wants to be there. If they've got time in their schedule, they want to be there. They want to understand the products you're producing within the tag and label industry, the impacts on the supply chain, the customers that you're connected with, some of the brands that they might recognize if they're not familiar already with your company. They want to be there. They like to do this. They are happy. They are smiling, especially if they get a bit of hands-on experience at different parts of the production process within your plant. So you'll want to do that. So the next slide here is a little bit more on the background, but it also touches a bit upon what they're doing in Congress and the impact that it might have on your business directly. So if they're debating energy policy, you're going to want to take a look at that. If they're looking at tariffs, if they've voiced either support or opposition to tariffs and the impact of tariffs that have been implemented from China and the retaliatory tariffs for some of your customers' products that are being sold globally in the EU and China and elsewhere, what's the impact there? New skills and training, workforce development. How is the hiring? How is the process going at your plant? Are you able to find the skilled workforce that you need to support your plants and facilities operations? Tax changes. Have the new changes to the tax law that President Trump signed in 2017, have they been helpful for your business? If they have been, let them know that. If they've been supportive of changes or policy within tariffs or energy or anything else, you want to let them know. And if they're not on your side, or you feel they're not on your side, there's a polite way, respectful way to explain that. You may support tariffs on China, and explaining to them the cost on the impact in terms of both raw material that you might be sourcing from there, or some part of the finished product that you're getting from China as well. You'll want to know how they voted as well. If there have been votes on issues that you care about, you'll want to do a little bit of research on that as well. It's not for you to challenge, not necessarily for you to challenge them on a vote that you felt was against your business's interest, but it's always good for them to understand the impacts on an issue. And over time, it may change their opinion on a policy that's either being pushed into Congress, or as we've seen much in the past 2 years, top down from the administration. Okay, Setting up the visit. There's some basic things that you'll want to do before the visit begins. Unlike the Hill meetings, for those of you who have come into DC, you're not going to necessarily connect directly with their scheduler in DC. You're going to want to schedule with the district director, the scheduler back in the district. TLMI is more than happy to help with that aspect. Email addresses, contacts, phone numbers. Oftentimes they have a few different district offices, and if it's a senator, they're going to have several more than that. There's usually 1 or 2 point people that arrange the tours and the in-district and at-home meetings when Congress is not in schedule, and that's going to be the person that you're going to want to send a formal letter to. Of course, you'll want to review the congressional calendar well in advance for recess opportunities. I would say, given that it's almost June right now, the August recess, which is among the longest within the calendar years, is a good time to try to schedule some time back in the district for facility tours. And Mondays and Fridays outside of August, when they're just home for a week or two, are typically the best days for the tours, because the voting in Congress, when they have to go back into session, usually goes from Tuesday afternoon till Thursday afternoon. So that's the opportunity in terms of days of the week for the tour. You're also going to want to coordinate the length of an event in advance, and that's important for many reasons. Obviously, in terms of schedule, but you want to let their district director or their at-home in-district scheduler understand how much time you'd like to have of the member, and we'll talk about that a little bit here in the presentation. Okay, preparing for the visit again. You're going to want to, before I get into the details of what you want the member to see when he's in the facility or she is in the facility, I think what is often forgotten, but what's really important, especially with increased security at facilities and businesses over the past 15 years, you're going to want to handle some things in advance. May seem obvious, but it's really important to give really clear directions to your facility. Several plants and facilities have 2 separate entrances. Which entrance is the member going to go into? How are they going to look at it in terms of, getting in security? Or how many members and staff are they going to have with them at the tour? Who's going to greet them there? Is it going to be a plant manager? Is it going to be a co-owner? Is it going to be you yourself? Understand that when they get there, the first impression, while they will learn a lot about your business during the tour and during the background processes, the first impression is important, and it sets them off on a right note in terms of getting into your process and your plant. You're going to want to assign, after they're in, of course, and well in advance, you're going to want to talk to an employee or a staff member from your business, from your company, to take notes. Questions that might come up. If you don't have an answer to a question, the member or the member staff may ask. That's fine. Just take a note and say, we'll get back to you on that. That's a great question. You're going to want to figure out the machinery that's going to be in operation. You're going to make sure, you want to make sure that obviously everything is in place, and the machinery and the equipment or the processes that you're going to highlight during the plant are running smoothly. And just as important, your employees that are going to be running them during the visit understand that the tour is occurring well in advance of it, and so they can be prepared to talk a bit about what exactly it is they do, and if there's a chance, obviously, for hands-on experience, which is always great at these tours, you're going to have that prepared in advance as well. Goes without saying, part of this safety and the protocol process of the visit is making sure that any paperwork, any waivers that need to be signed in advance are done and prepared for both the member and any accompanying staff coming to the facility. A little bit more on setting up the visit. Clear invitation letter. What your company, who you are, what your company does, and what you would like to showcase. Follow up with the office. If you don't get a tour scheduled right away, be kind but be persistent with your request, and remain flexible. If the member can come in the early part of the day or the later part of the day, that would be fine. Just try to adjust processes and make planning preparation as appropriate. If you're going to make remarks prior to the tour, which we strongly suggest that everyone does, ensure that your conference room and any AV equipment, if you want to run through a PowerPoint highlighting your company, is both available and operational. I can tell you from personal experience, I've sat through 20 minutes of a hour tour while the AV tech with the company was attempting to set up a PowerPoint for the member and staff, and it took up an incredible amount of time and actually took away a bit from the visit itself. Distribute a memo of the visit to your employees. This doesn't have to be anything that elaborate, but make everyone that works at the plant know what's going to happen that day, even if they're not directly involved within the visit itself. And just as important, have the member and their staff interact with different levels of employees at your plants, whether you have hourlies, whether you have managers. You really want to have them get a feel for what it is that a wide variety of people do at your plant, so they know they're speaking to more than just the owner and seeing the plant from more than just the owner or the manager's perspective. And that should also be obviously well prepared with your staff members that you'd like to highlight or your colleagues that you'd like to highlight in advance. So what you see on your screen now is just kind of how crazy a member and even a state legislator, their recess schedule can be back in the district. It's intense. They don't like to waste time back in the district unless they are on a vacation and away from work. It's very scheduled. This is an actual recess schedule for a member from last August, I believe, in terms of how things went during a typical day. The in-office meetings is in-office meetings with their district staff. So when they're occupied with their DC staff in between voting and committee hearings on the Hill, it's the same thing when they get back in the district. They want to know about the constituent concerns. They want to know, who they're going to be visiting that week or later that day. And in between all of that, they have conference calls, lunches, dinners, potential fundraisers, and everything kind of flows together. So when you're looking at kind of what does a day look like if you have a member coming into your tour, your facility, what's it going to look like in terms of scheduling, time allotted? This slide here kind of shows that. 90 minutes may not seem like a lot of time, but if everything is prepared in advance, it's actually quite a bit of time to give a real good impression and some real good insight on what your company does. It kind of outlines it detail-wise, whether it would be a morning or an afternoon. I strongly recommend kind of following this time frame. And I really recommend after the introductions, some kind of conference room presentation. Even if there's no AV involved, leave behinds, one-pagers on your company, what it is you do. That goes along, obviously, with any safety waivers and other materials that would need to be signed or reviewed in advance. but make them comfortable. You don't want them to go right into a tour right when they walk through the door for many reasons. The main one being you'd have to completely explain what your company does during the actual tour. You want some time with them, at least 15 minutes to kind of sit down and highlight the company and kind of preview what they're going to see on the tour. Going through the facility tour, and I've talked about this a little bit earlier, potential meet and greets with select employees that are obviously briefed well in advance on any questions that they may have for you before the member comes in, and a demonstration of what it is that's done. Again, hands-on is great. Final product is great. Kind of looking at, kind of holding what it is you do at the end of the line, and in terms of if you're able to, which would be terrific, and anything that you could give them as a takeaway from the tour behind the one-pagers and the leave-behinds and the flyers and the brochures highlighting your company. That's really important. If there's time, it's always great to do a very quick debrief in the conference room. This gives time for pictures, refreshments, follow-up questions, tweeting out from your company, allowing the member, just as important, to tweet from their Twitter accounts or LinkedIn or Facebook or however they would like to promote. This is where I was today. I was at company X, and we got to see a lot of great things, and they employ so many people in the district, and this is what they care about, and this is what they make, and this is how they do it. It's kind of a mutual way for you to promote your company and for the member to promote him or herself as kind of being in the district and understanding the businesses that drive the community. Of course, all of this would be planned in advance with their scheduler and their advance person back in the district. You don't want to surprise the member with, oh, now we're going to go here. The member should have a complete understanding of what it is they're going to be doing from the moment they walk in to the moment they leave. And again, 60 to 90 minutes. Hopefully, it would be 90 minutes if they'd have an hour and a half. Is a good amount of time to do that in. Again, during the visit, I've covered some of this, but it's worth reemphasizing. A folder of material, legislative priorities, opportunities for your businesses, what are challenges for your businesses, especially in any way that the member could assist you on Capitol Hill, whether it's legislation, whether it's an initiative. You'll want to highlight that, and you're going to want to ask TLMI too. What can you help provide? Let us know. Give us a heads up. I know Alex and Catherine, myself, and Dan, and the entire staff would be happy to try to put some information together on a broader view of TLMI, or if there's questions that you have. Should I include this? What do you think of this approach? I have a question on legislation that my member either supports or opposes. How should I phrase that to them throughout the visit? That's what we're here for, and we want to be able to do that. Just a general reminder here, try to give hats, buttons, t-shirts, swag to the member and their staff, but in terms of the gift-giving rules and within the Congress, you're going to want to keep that collective number, dollar value under $50, which should be plenty of flexibility for some hats and t-shirts and tchotchkes and anything else that you think the member might want to have as a takeaway and a reminder of the visit to the facility. And of course, tweet, Facebook, Instagram, as agreed to beforehand. Promote the visit and encourage their staff and the member to promote the visit through their social media channels as well. Follow-up, really important. You don't want to have a great visit and then that's it. You want a thank you note, and you want a thank you note that comes not 2 months after the visit, but by the next week. Invitation to return. Did you discuss key issues, legislation, regulations, opportunities, business challenges? Highlight those in your note back to them. Thank you for talking to me about X, Y, and Z. I'm glad to see that you believe this is a possibility, or that you support this legislation, or that you understand my company's position on different views. If there's pictures, send the pictures to the staff. You will see them often pop up on the website. If you go to a member's website, most of them have a section at the top for back in the district. And what's there? A lot of times it's these kinds of visits back in the district. They want to be able to promote this visit 9 times out of 10 as much as you'll want to do that. So be sure to send those pictures to them as they're taken, and in a context that they can repost them on the website. And then look to highlight it in your company magazines or in TLMI's publications, whether it's the GRA updates or any of the other online communication platforms that go out from TLMI. Tell us about it. Send us the pictures. Send us an article. Would you like us to help draft a couple paragraphs about your visit that can go out to the membership, that you would want to do that, to say, hey, I had member so-and-so here. Here's a couple paragraphs about what we talked about, and here's a couple pictures from the tour itself. TLMI is happy to do that, and I'm happy to help as well. The last thing is thank your employees. And this can kind of get lost in the shuffle, but there's been a lot of preparation for a visit coming in, whether it's making sure that not only everything is working as you'd like it to, but cleaning up, preparing, being on time, being aware of what's happening. And that goes beyond the employees that are going to be interacting with the member one-on-one, across all levels. Your employees have probably had done some preparation in addition to their daily work at the facility in order to make the visit from the member a success. So with that, that concludes the presentation. And I guess before we turn it over for any kind of general questions or feedback, Alex and Catherine, if you have any other comments or thoughts you'd like to share, that'd be great.
No, Brian, this was great. Thank you for putting it together.
Yes, Brian, thank you so much for putting this together. I think that was a really great overview. Just my only thoughts on the whole thing for folks sitting there thinking, should I or shouldn't I try to move forward with doing this type of a meeting? This is a really great opportunity to build a relationship with your elected official. So unlike going to DC, where you might have 5 or 6 meetings all scheduled in a day, you're actually talking to the person who is making decisions about where you live, and makes and is supposed to be representing you, your employees, and your company. So it's a really great opportunity to build that relationship. And a lot of times what we see is when folks start building that relationship, they start to see the real benefits of having an ally and having a relationship, especially once something comes down legislatively that will impact their business. So if you have any further questions, I'll hand this back over to Brian, but my only last thoughts are be flexible, be courteous, and let us know if you need any help.
That's great. Thank you, Alex and Catherine. Alex makes a great point. This is a real opportunity to build a relationship. And as Alex said, even if you get time with a member, back, in DC, that's terrific. It shouldn't be discounted at all. But that member's probably also had to meet with a dozen other people that day in between hearings and votes and everything else going on. So this is a real chance at a slower pace to kind of talk about what you want to talk about, highlight your company, and really make a connection for the future, especially when legislation or other issues come up and you need a champion. And that'll be someone that you could potentially go back to.
This is Jessica with TLMI. I'm going to go ahead and unmute all of the attendees in case you have a question. And if you do not have a question now, please feel free to come back and ask Brian or Alex or Catherine.
It's us. Oh, it can't be us. I'm off.
And this is Brian. And one other thing I'll add, and this should have been on the last slide, but I'll put my email address and my contact information on the PDF that will be posted for the TLMI members to see. You're going to be able to look at this recording at a later date, and also have the PDF of it as well. So before that PDF gets posted, there'll be my contact information there. So if there's questions about reaching out to someone in terms of either crafting a letter or the best contact for a particular member, feel free to reach out to me. But we'll have that when it's posted on the TLMI site.
Hey, Brian, this is Mike Hess. Is there anyone on the call, or are you aware of people who have successfully done this in the past, recent past, and any particular feedback from them?
Can you hear? This is Liz Pelker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, we didn't go through this formal process, but we won an award once, and our rep came by, and it's pretty much as we didn't even do anything. I mean, the rep's staff did it was pretty much as they described. It's a very tight schedule. It's kind of a whirlwind. They come in, they want to talk to your employees, and unfortunately that rep got redistricted out of office. So, but he was a really good rep for us, and it was a connection we hadn't even tried to make. He had just they had initiated because we were award winner, and I thought it was really beneficial. So I am thinking that we will try it again with our new rep now.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Liz. And I've done this several times over the past 5 or 6 years, and it's outside of a snafu with PowerPoint for 20 minutes, everything went well. And I think the companies that participated found it really worthwhile in terms of what it is. And I can't tell you how opposite polar ends politically some of the members coming in to the owners were, but politics didn't come up. It was wisely avoided. And when it comes down to it, kind of looking at that product from a member perspective, you really start to see things a bit differently. And it's really helpful on many levels. So I'm glad you did that and had some success with it.
Hey, Mike, this is Alex Jostin.
Yes.
CCL has done several of these visits at a couple of our different locations, and we've gotten nothing but positive feedback back from those experiences. We had one facility that actually hosted a barbecue luncheon that they invited the member out for, and like I said, as just echoing what everyone else said, it's always been a very positive experience. Never anything negative that came out of it, or always a great opportunity to form that connection.
Oh yeah, no, I think I'm going to strongly suggest that we do it here, and I tend to become pen pals with my representatives, so it would be it would be interesting. I just wonder if there are any little tidbits or insights, but it doesn't sound like it has been a widely used thing, but probably should be used much more effectively by the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any question to that, none whatsoever. So I guess to get back to the comments of when people do have successful events, if you can let us know about them, we want to publicize that and share that with the membership as best as possible. This is hopefully just the beginning of a long-standing tradition of us doing this activity, so it's great.
I did find when the rep came that they were really interested in what we did, and that they really, I think it's always good for them, especially in manufacturing, to see the facilities and what we're making and what we're contributing to the, and our company was much smaller when he came. I think we only had like 20 people or something, but we had equipment investment, we had buildings, and we had, all this stuff. And I think they were, I think it was good for them, as educational for them to see that.
Mhm.
So, Mike, this is Alex again. A few things that I always tell facilities that are going to invite somebody in from outside. I always recommend you have a few extra staff members that of your employees that are on site. Members they got to where they are because they're kind of people persons, and they like to they'll walk around and they'll go and chit chat, and sometimes they'll go right up to somebody who's working on the floor and say, "Hi, I'm so and so," and want to shake their hand. So sometimes it can be helpful to be able to pull some people off the floor to go talk to the member or to come and sit into the meeting, but without impacting your production too much.
Sure.
Particularly for our industry. The other piece of advice I always give is to try to remain flexible and go with the flow. As Brian demonstrated very well, these members have very packed schedules, and sometimes they'll be late, sometimes they'll have to cancel at the last minute, and they'll try to reschedule. Take all of that with a grain of salt and focus on trying to communicate in whatever amount of time and whatever format you're able to about your business and about our industry. And then 3, the last thing that I'll say is I always recommend highlighting that our industry is full of really good skilled labor and high quality blue collar positions. So these aren't minimum wage workers who are sitting out there on the floor. These are good manufacturing jobs that we're creating in their districts, which is always something that elected officials like to talk about and hear about.
Sure. Thanks, Alex.
Alex, hey, this is Dan, and I know this isn't the purpose of this phone call, but we probably should talk, you, Catherine, and me and Brian, about developing a piece, some kind of an infographic that does talk about the label industry in a broader sense, in terms of number of participants, employees, blah, blah, blah. And we can even work with other print organizations to get the broader print. So let's just put that down as an action item on our end to talk about. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Okay, so this is Brian. Are there any other comments or questions? And thank you guys for your feedback, and very helpful. And I think, that companion piece that Dan just mentioned be extremely helpful in terms of the overall industry, and a nice companion to, your company brochures and information for certain.
This is Catherine. It sounds like we don't have any more questions. Is that correct? I think by the silence we could call it today. Alex,
Very
Brian,
good.
Are you good? Yeah. All right. Well, excellent. Well, thank you everybody again for your time. Come to us with any questions, comments, needs that you have, and have an excellent rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thank you.